Welcome into the Week 5 Gillcast. Everybody, I'm Sammy Reid. I'm joined by my two very fishy friends, Nate Nohling and Josh ADHD. Nate, how's it going, fella?
Doing all right. Had a little bit of an interesting Sunday. Had to travel, so had to fly out. Missed a couple of the games this afternoon, but profitable week after taking a 0, which is always good. So profitable week.
Back on the horse. Josh, how was your Sunday, man?
I wish I could have been on an airplane all day. I did not get to watch any football. I had to take a bunch of small children fishing, which is something I hate to do.
That's brutal.
And I goose egg. So it's been a banner flipping Sunday. I'm fully on tilt. I am fully on tilt. I have been for 9 hours.
Yes, you are in the right spot, my friend. This is where we come to tilt. So tell me real fast a little bit about, like, what was the worst part? Was it losing money or was it going fishing with a bunch of kids?
Unfortunately, I'd have to say it's going fishing with a bunch of kids. The money I could deal with because I made good decisions that didn't work out. So the money, it's okay. Like that happens. Having to give up your Sunday to take a bunch of little kids fishing, which is it's something I hate to do already.
Yeah, fishing is actually bad. I feel like it sounds very un-American. Like if you say that to another man, he's like, "What are you talking about? I love fishing. Fishing is great." And I'm like, "No, that sucks." Like it's a production. I can see
why people like it. Like I get why people like it. I personally do not like it, and I really don't like when I'm conscripted to do things by other people. And
yeah, you got roped.
The source of my tilt.
You got roped into this. This was not an ADHD decision.
No, it would never be an ADHD decision. There's no gratification to be had.
You just ran bad, man. You just ran bad. It's tough.
This was definitely a run bad Sunday, and we're trying to make it with alcohol right now.
Good. Very good. Well, I'm a little under the weather, and Nate is off in North Carolina, like gallivanting around. So, we're just.
I'm trying to find a spot where the internet is like good, and I'm like trying to sit next to the modem here. I think.
I wish all you guys could see the video of this. This is amazing.
Where the internet is good, or where like all your coworkers aren't creeping on you.
No, it's in Airbnb, so it's like a nice place, but the internet apparently is very spotty in the room that I was just in. But I think I'm good now.
Yeah, we just got a nice tour of the place. It is nice.
It is nice. It is nice.
I've been there.
So this should be good.
Yeah, and there's no moose heads on the wall from what I can see, though. So that's slightly disappointing.
No, there isn't. Yeah.
Well, you got great acoustics in there, Nate. Let's go over our lineups. Let's wash this tilt out. I'm a little tilted from Sunday. I did profit, but I could have profited like 50% more if I didn't make a swap this morning, which I never do, and I did this morning, and I'm super.
Sunday morning swaps are always.
They're just bad. Like they're just bad. It wasn't like anything based on new information, which I'm okay with. It was just like, you know what? I think I like this better all of a sudden, and I shouldn't have done that. So
was it something that you liked early in the week?
Yeah, I mean,
or something that you decided that you just liked this morning for some reason.
Yeah, I just decided I liked it this morning. Like I liked all the players, but I had it one way, and I had that, I had it in since Thursday, and I was like, good. And then this morning, I just like woke up early, and I was like checking stuff out, and I'm like, I actually think this is a little bit better. And it was not better. It was not even close to better. In fact, it was quite a bit worse. So we'll get into the details of that. Josh, tell me about your score. What did you put up on DraftKings and cash this week?
So I put up 129 on DraftKings.
Oof.
Woof. Yes. Yeah, it was you just imagine getting your nuts kicked for like 7 straight hours on a Sunday. And that's my day today.
So you're out on this boat and you're catching fish and the kids are screaming and drinking Capri Suns and you're getting sunburnt and being bummed out. Are you like checking your phone as this is going on, or did you like leave?
I tried really hard not to be on my phone the whole time and to be like, the whole be here kind of thing that people talk about.
Be engaged.
Yes, I tried really, really hard to be engaged, but every time I looked at my phone, it was just like, son of a bitch. These assholes are not scoring. Like, what is wrong with football today?
Why my score still 0? What's happening?
Yes. So yeah, it was every time I looked at my phone, it was just this total nut kick.
Yeah.
And what about for you, Nate?
I put up 148.24 in cash. So ended up doing all right. Could have been a much better day. I think I had some run. I mean, we'll get into it. You probably don't think it was run bad because you thought he was a bad play going into the week, but Anuno with a 0 hurt me quite a bit. I think
He's just like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to jam in receivers against.
Dude, Anuno was the volume Anuno was seeing is like, I don't know. I'm just not going to let a tough matchup in the slot like concern me. He runs 48% of his routes. I knew he was going to be running against Chris Harris, but they play enough zone. I don't know. I thought, again, I'm not going to be talked off a matchup when I think the volume's going to be there. I'm going to go there. Anunwa was seeing, I think, the seventh most targets, seventh highest weighted opportunity rating. It's, to me, where he was priced this week. I thought I wasn't really concerned. So
the game script that happened in that game, like the game script that happened was not the game script that anybody envisioned, I would assume. Where the Jets just got out to this huge lead based on their running game. Like the last game never hits for the Jets.
Well, I think the important thing that everybody really wants to know is when you saw these deep bombs going to Robbie Anderson and him, galloping 70 yards for touchdowns, how did that make you feel? What were the emotions that were going through?
Yeah, it was pretty tilt. I'm not going to lie. When you see that, like, wait a second, they are able to put up points. Like, I was expecting them to be behind and them having to throw, and just figured Anuno would just continue to get the target share that he'd been seeing. But I don't know. I just thought the volume would be there. Unfortunately, it wasn't. I think he was seeing red zone target. I mean, everything about his volume profile looked worthy of a play this week for me. But bit me. But I think, the rest of the lineup, I think my biggest question was just before the game, my QB1 going into, from a value per dollar standpoint was Patrick Mahomes. Really wanted Mahomes. And then, on our text thread this morning, actually, Davis was concerned about the weather in that game. And so I actually got talked off of Mahomes. So it was what was my swap? It was
the Matic Sunday morning weather take. Smooth.
Yeah, the Matic.
Very smooth.
But, I mean, it wasn't too bad of a swap. I think it was Mahomes and Landry versus Goff and Woods. And I ended up on Goff and Woods, which ended up working out. There were some variance in the favor for Woods with some of the brutal injuries that the Rams faced. Obviously, the Cooks one was disheartening to see for sure. I mean, NFL's brutal, but it was also some run bad for Goff. I think Gurley getting 3 touchdowns like that was that's tough.
Who could have imagined Gurley?
No, it's not that. It's just when you have a quarterback who's with an implied total of that and to only put up 1 touchdown, he got the 300-yard bonus. He did you're not going to get that. Normally when you have a quarterback that's in a game that shoots out like this, they're going to see more touchdowns. And so I think Goff on the lower side
almost had a touchdown and it got called back too. I think one of them was to Gurley and it was like a little forward pitch and Gurley got called in and he brought it back and then he didn't get it.
And it was on the 1. So then So it was, I think Goff here at 19.34, whatever he had, it was 300 plus passing yards with a passing touchdown. I think he was on the bottom side, but I thought Mahomes and Goff were my 2 favorite cash quarterbacks this week. So,
okay. So you had Goff, and Josh, what did you do at quarterback?
So I used Stafford, and
he was really popular. He was
super popular.
23% in the big single entry $25 double up, which was a lot higher than I was expecting. Was he getting pumped by?
Was he that talky?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I think one of the projection systems or something like that was really high on him.
Yeah, and he was a guy I kind of picked out when I saw prices come out this week as thinking that's a really good price for him, and he could hit for 30 points. I thought pretty easily, given the type of offenses both of these teams have and the defenses they have. I thought that was kind of a shoe in for a floor 23 points. and he went way below that. The other guy I had targeted this week was Kirk Cousins. And this morning I kept tinkering with the lineup, and I was like, I really want to get Cousins in here, but I couldn't make it work with the rest of the guys I wanted to put on the roster. So I defaulted. I went back to Stafford, and I was like, can I fall back to Bortles here and do something with Bortles that gives me a little bit of flexibility elsewhere? It was $200. I couldn't make it work to where I could rebuild the lineup with some other guys I wanted. So I was just like, all right, well, to hell with it. I'm going to run Stafford and trust what I thought very first in the week, that this is a high floor matchup, and it just to work out. That game was really weird.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, Blunt got 2 1-yard touchdowns, and I wasn't watching a ton of the game, but I know like Galladay had a long touchdown called back because of like hands to the face. I was watching this on Twitter, and then Marvin Jones like clanked a long one. Like, it could have easily gone a lot better for Stafford. He ran pretty bad.
Yeah, for sure. And so like when I talked earlier, it's like just, it was a good process, bad result week. I mean, that's just like, that totally plays into it. That's exactly what I feel like I had. And, if things had just gone like normal for Stafford, it would have been a good week. Like, even though he's so highly owned, I feel like I would have made out on that decision.
Well, yeah, him only getting 26 pass attempts or whatever he got was not in the range of outcomes that I saw. I mean, they're throwing at a pretty insane rate right now there in Detroit, and so from a game script standpoint, I could see Stafford just from the amount of pass attempts and just what you're going to think with his receivers. I think people underrate how important it is for a strong receiver core, and I think Stafford was a fine play because of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys really bring up some really strong points and have some really great reasoning. But the truth is you're both fish and didn't play Blake Bortles, the god in cash, like I did. So I don't know. I don't know what you guys were thinking. It was all set up for trash time Bortles. I mean, owning Bortles is an experience of its own, because for the first 2 hours of the games, I'm just sitting there pulling my hair out. Like, why did I do this? Like, why did I play Blake freaking Bortles? I'm such a guppy. And then he just ends up with like 430 yards and multiple touchdowns. And the 5 turnovers was like not even an issue.
Didn't he break like a 30-yard rushing touchdown too?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. That was tilt.
He definitely did. He ended up with like almost 29 DraftKings points. And he's just like the worst quarterback you've ever seen in your life. He's so bad. Like, he throws the ball. I mean, it's like y'all ever see Byron Leftwich throw? Or, I mean, Nate, you watch baseball. You ever see Justin Verlander throw? It's like a full windup. It's like it takes like 8 seconds for him to throw the freaking ball. It's out of control. It's wild. Like, nobody ever taught him how to throw a football. It's crazy. And yet
I'm trying to think of some of these Japanese pitchers that have like 7 hitches.
Yeah, he's like Hideo Nomo.
Nomo.
He's like Tanaka. It's out of control. But, he just did Blake Bortles things and scored 29 points. So, I'm not mad. Yeah.
What did you guys do at running back? I mean, I think running back was the interesting spot. I think for me, I went with 3 guys that I thought was going to be pretty chalky. It wasn't as chalky as I expected. I went with Christian McCaffrey, DJ, and TJ Yeldon for my 3. It wasn't as chalky as I was expecting. Josh, Sammy, what did you guys do?
Let Josh go first, because this ties into my brutal, like, want to punch myself in the throat with brass knuckles 2v2 swap.
Yeah, so I decided to run just 2 running backs this week. I felt really strong about some of the wide receiver plays that I had, so I went with 2 running backs. I went with Joe Mixon and David Johnson. And that was part of that decision-making process, was that I had identified 2 wide receivers that I thought were must-have on my roster. And that led me to pay down a bit for a bell cow. So I went to Mixon and Johnson instead of playing Connor, instead of playing McCaffrey, instead of playing Melvin Gordon. So it's like 6,900, 6,300 for those 2 players. And they did fine. Like, between them, they were 41 points. I'm not going to complain about that. They had excellent days.
So you played DJ, and Nate, you played DJ too?
Mm-hmm.
And I also played DJ. Let me just throw this out there. We're all really dumb for playing David Johnson, and we ran incredibly hot for him to get 21.1 DraftKings points. Because, dude, I'm watching this game, like, it all sounded like a really good idea, And Arizona is just a bunch of bunglers. Like, their offense is so freaking bad. Like, all they do is run it up the middle out of a one-back set and just run, like, dives on first down and then throw incomplete on second and third, and that's how it goes. Like, he was so lucky.
This was kind of like the last-ditch effort for me with Arizona with David Johnson this year is like, he's super cheap. We talked about how cheap Kareem Hunt was a couple weeks back, and that he was just kind of the nuts cash play because he was $6,000. And I felt that way about Johnson this week. It's like, this is probably one of the few games that they're going to have positive game script and can get Johnson rolling. And they are so stupid. They is the dumbest offense I have seen in the NFL since the last two teams I watched on Sunday Night Football tonight.
Yeah. It's completely like Dallas Cowboys offense.
And it's just really, they are complete numbskulls out there in Arizona. And it's just until they change the offensive coordinator out there, until they change what they're doing, I can't play David Johnson anymore because you cannot rely on a last 2-minute touchdown to buoy your scoring for a running back that's that cheap.
Yeah, he got that garbage ass touchdown at the end, and I was like, thank the good Lord, I'm not playing David Johnson anymore. Like, that was it. I won my money. I got lucky. I'm out. I'm just out.
Yep.
So what I did, so I'll talk about my 2v2 here. This morning, I had Yeldon, McCaffrey, and David Johnson. And David Johnson was always a play for me. I just thought my thinking was that he was
because you're a fish.
Yeah, because I'm a fish. I mean, that was my thinking. I have gills and scales, and that's what I do. I don't have eyelids. I just, like, when I sleep, my eyes are open. That's what I do. And I was like, David Johnson, got to lock him in. Right? And then McCaffrey I thought was a good play. Like, McCaffrey's just, like, really high floor. I didn't love him, but dude, with the work he gets on the ground, he's just so high floor. He's an ideal cash game play. And then I thought Yeldon, I wasn't in love with Yeldon, but it was fine. And what I did have at receiver, I had Adam Thielen. And so I had Thielen and Yeldon, and this morning I swapped them out for Melvin Gordon III and Marvin Jones Jr. And that cost me, I ended up with 146.6, which was definitely good enough, way above the cash line. Did fine, like solid, I don't know, like 20 some odd % ROI overall. In cash, it was better than that. I think I ran under in GPP, but it was like I would have had 50% more profit in cash if I had kept it the way it was, because I loved Adam Thielen. And I just said, Gordon against Oakland is just going to smash, and it's going to be great. And he was fine. He was great. He had 110 yards and a touchdown, 4 catches. He did Melvin Gordon things, but he didn't absolutely smash. And I think Marvin Jones might have been like a fishy play. So let's talk about that. Let's go to receiver. Nate, what did you do at receiver?
Receiver was where I think I am always going to differ from the field a little bit. And today I think the question was all about MVS and just what you were going to do there. I felt it was pretty thin with MVS, but the more I looked at it, the more I just realized, like, this is going to be one of those things where if the field's going to be on him, even if I don't think he's a great play, there's just so much variance that can go his way with Aaron Rodgers being his quarterback. It's just dumb to not play him at 3.3 at 50% ownership in cash games. So I locked
in this double up, and I just referenced the $25 single entry. It varies by tournament, but he was 36.1 in that one.
Okay. I mean, there were some 50-50s that he was 59+%. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm looking through some of the lineups and the ownerships in this tournament, and, like, people are actually bad. Like, there is still a significant edge in DFS. Like, Aaron Jones was 19.
I can't seem to find it.
Yeah, Aaron Jones was like 19-20% owned in this tournament in cash. Like, I thought Aaron Jones was I liked him in tournaments. It's a good like low price shot to take, but like in cash, are you insane? Have you lost your mind? It's crazy to realize that, like, you're a fish, and yet there are still species of, like, non-developed, like, non-evolved fish that are lower than you on the food chain. And that makes me happy about DFS still.
Yeah. So I went MVS, I went Woods, and then I went Enunwa. MVS, I think, was
terrible.
So then I went Woods and then Anunwa. Anunwa is the one that Sammy's going to say is terrible, but we've already.
Well, let's talk about that for just a second. It'll be a variation of a conversation we've had before, but obviously you look at, you go to airyards.com and you look at, weighted opportunity, and Anunwa was like top 10 coming into this week, right?
I mean, I don't know if he's top 10 going into this week. Let's see where he's at after this week. Season summary.
But bottom line, let's talk about how you see that as like descriptive versus predictive.
So I actually do project out air yards, targets, and things like that. And so if I look at today's, just based on my projections going into this game, and I look at weighted opportunity rating, Julio had the highest weighted opportunity rating on the day, then Corey Davis, then Odell Beckham, then Devontae Antonio, AJ Green, and then Quincy Enunwa. So right there, if I clearly just look at like weighted opportunity rating, one of those guys sticks out, and that's going to be Quincy Enunwa at 5,200. And so I projected him with almost a 32% target share here, and at 5,200, like a target share that high, I'm not going to fade that. So
I guess talk to me about what goes into that. Like, is it that he's had a big target share through the first couple games this year, so you think he'll have that same kind of target share this week, or like, how does that? And I'm not trolling you here. Like, how does that work?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it starts with looking at like, what are the rates target share that I feel comfortable projecting for the rest of these guys. You look at Robbie Anderson, you look at Jermaine Kearse, you look at Bilal Powell, you look at Crowell, Tomlinson, look at the rest of these guys and start projecting things out. And then overall, I just have to get to 100%. So when I start looking at things and I start plugging in numbers based on season averages, look at their weeks, I weight recent weeks more than I weight prior weeks. And these are the numbers that I can come up with. And then I do some manual and adjustments and tweaks and stuff during the week. Like, for example, Mixon this week coming back a little bit injured. His rates were a little bit lower than just inputting him in Giovanni Bernard's spot from last week. So, I mean, I do some manual adjustments, but at the end of the day, I get to 100 and look at things from there. And so, I look at Quincy Enunwa's rates. It was like right around 32. You project that out with the projected pass attempts that he's going to have. It's going to be close to 10 targets that I see. And at 5,200, I don't know.
So Josh, let me get your take on this, because as we were watching this god awful Texans, Dallas Cowboys, I don't even want to say their name. They're so bad. That freaking game's brutal. As we're watching this, there's this Twitter conversation going on where Frisco Josh, really good data analyst, guy who created airyards.com, he was kind of having some fun on Twitter saying that defense doesn't matter, et cetera, et cetera. In a situation like Enunwa's, where he's facing a pretty tough corner like Chris Harris, how do you kind of see those things? Like, what's your take on this whole conversation?
So my take on it is I tend to agree with Hermsmeyer in that defenses, for the most part, do not matter. But some of the work I've done, and he kind of capitulated to this a little bit, indicates that the top defenses at creating quarterback pressure are legit. Like, that's a real thing. And more often than not, what they do is they create blown blocks by an offense, and blown blocks lead to quarterback pressure. So to that end, there is some merit to defenses matter. I think his contention is that primarily wide receiver or cornerback matchups don't matter, because if an offense does what they need to do to get the wide receiver the ball, it doesn't matter who's covering the guy, because they will make targets to that wide receiver. So
yeah, I approach modeling in a little bit of a different way than some of the ways that I see Josh going around that argument. And one of the things that I do is mixed modeling. And so I look at a data set. And so let's just look at wide receivers, for example. I'll take a data set of 2017 data. I'll look at the wide receiver. I'll look at the passer. I'll look at the defense. I'll look at down distance, yards to go, whether it was indoors, outdoors, temperature, everything like that. And I'll start building a model and trying to project it. And the model will always increase in accuracy from a predictive standpoint when I include defense in there as a random effects term versus when I do not. And so if I input a null defense in, it actually decreases the predictive power of the model. And so you can argue on certain metrics, it's more than others. So for example, on yards per carry, like if I'm actually just trying to project out yards, it's not great. But when I look at like air yards, and there's certain things like that certain defenses actually, when you look at certain receiver archetypes and where they're going to be targeted, certain ADOTs, there are teams that over a season are consistently bad in specific spots. That doesn't necessarily mean that from a year-to-year standpoint, that stat is going to be sticky and predictive. But in season, you can model it out. Because defense has changed so much from year to year, I don't believe that just because Denver was a nonstop defense last year or Jacksonville was, that means going into this year they need to be. But that also doesn't mean that it doesn't have any predictive value. Because DFS is a week to week, you have to find a way of modeling that can actually include some of that year to year, week to week stuff, and not just look at it as an overgeneralized year to year. What's sticky from 5 years ago to this year to this year to this year. Right. If you can prove it week to week, that's what mixed modeling is built for. Hierarchical. I mean, this is why it exists. And when you throw a factor like that into a model that isn't predictive, it will literally just not include it. It will put that effect at zero when you look at the actual model summary. And so, generalized linear mixed models is how I build my framework. And that's, I can very quickly tell you whether or not something matters. And most of the time I've actually found that like identity of a receiver versus their height or their weight actually matters more on some of this stuff than identity. When it comes to touchdowns, most receivers actually don't have an ability to create a higher touchdown rate based on that target more than their height or their weight will tell you about them. And so there are plenty of things that I will agree with Josh on, but I think specifically with defenses don't matter. They just matter a lot less than most people agree with. But to just not include them at all seems asinine to me.
Yeah, so I guess the bigger point I was trying to make is that, at least in my research, that defense only matters to the point where the offense respects it. And I think I'm re-summarizing what I said a few minutes ago. That if an offense gives too much credence to a defense, then it will make the defense more powerful than it seems. And I think that happens all too often in the NFL.
I.e., if they see a tough cornerback matchup, they'll tend to throw away from that corner and not give that receiver as many opportunities.
But yes, because I would say by and large, NFL coaches are stupid. And Correct. They will do they will do the most negative EV thing they can possibly do, which is they will castrate their own offense because they think it is the best thing for them to do from an efficiency standpoint. And that's
right. So you can't go in assuming that people are going to act in a logical way.
Right. And that gets back to the concept of rational coaching that Sigmund Bloom talks about quite a bit. Right. And I think as DFS players, that is something that we forget to keep in mind way too often, and I'm guilty of it as anybody else, is that coaches will act rationally. They do not act rationally. And I think my lineup probably speaks to that a little bit this week, in that I built my lineup thinking that coaches would act rationally, and I've probably got 4 spots that I could argue in hindsight that the coaches did exactly what they probably would have done if I had thought about it from their perspective instead of my perspective as a logical human being.
Very interesting.
One of the examples that I'll put, I'll just pull up a model from this year and let's look at ADOT. So if I'm trying to project out a receiver's ADOT, the identity of the receiver is 18 times more important than the opponent, and the identity of the passer and the identity of a receiver is 4 times more important than the actual passer. And so when you talk about who does ADOT belong to, it's the receiver. But just inputting 100%. The receivers. But it's not 100% the receiver. It's right. 18 times more important than the offense or than the opponent. It's 4 times more important than the passer. But to include those as 0, as null, is just not accurate.
No, but the scale of which you include them, though, is not. You don't include it 50-50. You don't make the defense more powerful. It's a tiny part, right?
Correct. That's why I model it this way, where I don't have to make manual adjustments and go, oh, Jacksonville, I have to bring this guy manually down. No, I can put Jacksonville into a model and go, what has Jacksonville done above zero from a Bayesian approach to all opponents that they have faced, and actually apply like with proper shrinkage and other effects like that, and actually bring things to the mean, you know?
He said proper shrinkage.
Shrinkage is
Caught that one too.
it's a term.
Your model's a little bit cold, Nate.
I've never heard Nate as passionate on this show ever before he went on his model rant. This is great.
He went on a shrinkage rant, and like, man,
Sorry, I just had to get out there.
Maximum shrinkage for Nate. What did you do at receiver, Josh?
Okay, so I ran 4 receivers, like I said earlier. I felt really strong about a couple plays, so I put one in the flex. I ran Adam Thielen. I had Nelson Aguilar. I had Taywan Taylor. And then flex, I ran Keenan Allen. And, Keenan Allen, he did okay. He didn't do exactly he didn't hit his floor, in my opinion. He was a little below that. But he was in the Hermsmeyer air yards buy low model this week. And in my opinion, when a Chargers player shows up in the buy low model, I think he's a must play, because that's a high volume passing offense typically. And for Keenan Allen to show up in that model, I thought was very significant. And to me, it merited a must play. And I had kind of circled him early in the week when this pricing came out, just saw the matchup. And I was like, that game has shootout potential. That game, both teams could get to the upper 20s, low 30s. And if that happens, Keenan Allen I thought he was a shoe-in for 25 to 30 DraftKings points. And obviously Oakland didn't play their part.
So, I mean, yeah, because they're coached by John Gruden. So here's where I would say that I would probably challenge a little bit of the Keenan Allen, because like cash games are so much, obviously you want a ceiling and you want upside, but you also want a high floor. And so talk to me a little bit about your like thought process of a guy like Keenan Allen over a running back. Like McCaffrey was $200 more. I'm not sure how significant that $200
I could have easily put
more.
Saquon Barkley in at running back for
Barkley or Connor,
and bump David Johnson
like
to my flex.
Yeah,
I mean that was a soup, and I struggled with that this morning. That was one of the tweaks I messed with, and I came back to the thought that I had ID'd Keenan Allen on Tuesday as a guy that I thought was a must play. And the same with Adam Thielen. Those two guys, in my opinion, it was non-negotiable.
God, I wish I'd stuck with Thielen. I'm such an idiot.
That they were going to play. Like, it's just like so I couldn't get them out of my lineup. And if I can't take those two players out of my lineup, then I cannot play Saquon Barkley. Absolutely not.
I don't mind I just think from Keenan, there were a couple guys around him from a price tag that I think I like Saquon more. I like Thielen more. And I think Devontae was the clear, for what was Devontae, $200 less? Like if I had that much to spend up at a wide receiver, like what were your thoughts on Devontae this week?
Well, first off, Nate, how much do you dock? And obviously he had a great game. I think he had 32 points, but how much do you dock a guy like Devontae who comes in with an injury? I know that Chris Raybon's done some work and shown that like receivers will lose between 10 and 20% of their effectiveness based on like lower leg injuries. How do you factor that in?
Honestly, I do less with injury work than most. It's one of those things where, if I'm confident a guy's going to be playing, I'm going to include him in as full health. I might dock their volume a little bit. Like, so when I knew Joe Mixon's coming back and early in the week, they said, hey, they're going to ease him in. Okay, I'm not going to include just his season rate from a target share projection. But from an efficiency standpoint, I don't dock it just because there's so much variance with efficiency already that trying to account for how injured a player is, it's so hard to know these days.
Yeah.
So I might go
Josh
side of that.
Yeah, Josh, back to Nate's question about how you kind of juxtaposed Allen against some of those other guys at a similar price point.
Yeah, so like McCaffrey, I liked McCaffrey this week. I didn't have any problem with McCaffrey. It's just, that $300 is kind of a breaking point for me with the way I wanted to build the rest of the roster. I mean, it was just I couldn't justify it. I couldn't find a guy that I could drop a price and feel like I had a better roster altogether. And then, James Conner, I could have played James Conner really easily. And looking back on the way I built my roster, what I should have done was gotten off a full slate and played early games only. If I had played early games only, I would have made a much better lineup this week because I would have played the guys that hit this week. And that's a little bit results-based, right? There's kind of a problem there. That's results-based. But I think I would have made better decisions by not trying to shoehorn so many late-game guys into my roster and just stick with the early-game guys that I felt had the best production profile. And that was Connor. I mean, Connor would have been a shoe-in. Saquon, he's a shoe-in. And then I get Thielen and I get Keenan Allen out of my lineup, and I do something else at receiver. And it's probably like Tyler Boyd at 5,700, who I thought was a super solid play at his price. And then I might have run who else? I can't think of who else off the top. I might have tried to put in Odell Beckham Jr. at 8,000 instead of Adam Thielen. And I've just run either like a McCaffrey and Beckham stack on a game stack or run Barkley and Beckham together. And either one of those would have been better. From a results-based standpoint, so maybe that's the decision I need to make next time is when I'm trying to justify the late game guys, especially in the flex versus the early game guys, maybe I just need to get out of it and go play some early game slates and try to save myself some heartburn.
I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's a little results-based just thinking that, because if you believe in your process, you kind of want more. I don't know. I think you want more options because there's more decisions to make. And if you think you're better at making decisions than other people, you want that, I think. So Nate,
that's why showdowns are so fun for people this year, is because it increases the variance so much that you don't know if you're good or bad. It just gives everybody shakes.
You're playing the lotto. You're just playing the lotto.
Yeah, you're just like playing a tournament and everybody's got 15 big blinds and let's roll.
But I'm a hypocrite. I love showdowns.
You guys can't see the video, but Nate's eyes just dilate the moment he says showdown.
Yeah, next to
Shrink, all the Red Bull,
that's
though.
the thing that gets Nate going.
What'd you do at tight end, Nate?
I went Kelsey, and this was a tough one for me all week. I think at the beginning of the week, I was like, "Oh man, I really like Kelsey," and then I'm like, "I can't pay $6K for a tight end. Tight end's where you pay down." And I was looking at guys like Hierman and other guys. But the more I looked at stuff, the more I looked at 6K, and I looked at the 6K price range for wide receivers. And I said, okay, what do I project Travis Kelsey for from a just a pure targets perspective and just a workload perspective? And I projected him to have 25 or above 25% target share with a decent amount of targets, because I knew Kansas City was going to throw in this game. So when I looked at wide receivers from a similar price tag, I just said, take their position aside. Who else would I rather play at 6K and below? And the only guy I could come up with was Kenny Galladay that was even going to be close. And Kenny Galladay is just such a higher range of outcomes from a variance standpoint than Travis Kelce, just based on his ADOT and his type of play. And so the more I looked at it, the more I felt comfortable with Kelsey, and just said, instead of viewing it as a tight end position, what if I just viewed this as 4 wide receiver positions? I was fine with Kelsey by the end of the week. And I know a lot of people think that's probably fish to play Kelsey, but the only thing that I almost got off of Kelsey today was, until Sammy helped me out a little bit, was Davis did get me concerned about the rain there in Arrowhead, and I did get off of Mahomes and cash. And then I was like, well, I had the Mahomes-Kelsey stack. I guess I got to pivot off from Mahomes and Kelsey. And then Sammy's like, letting rain get you off Kelsey? Are you serious?
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't.
Don't be a fish, bro. I didn't even talk about my receivers, so I'll just say them real quick. I did Juju because I was huge on Juju this week. I wanted shares of that Atlanta-Pittsburgh game. I really did. And Juju caught an early touchdown, and I'm just like, it is on, bitches. And it was 100%. Not on. It wasn't on. It wasn't even on at all.
It was off.
Yeah, it was just off. He ended with 13.4. I was like, wait, what happened?
That's what he had in the first quarter.
Yeah, he had 4 for 34, and then AB just started making it rain, and that all happened. And I had MVS. I also played Valdez-Scantling because he's just a goat, and you got to put in goats when they're 3.3. And then I had Marvin. Upsetting. And then I had Marvin Jones instead of Adam Thielen because I'm just a damn idiot. So at tight end, I played McDonald. What did you do, Josh?
So, yeah, I fished it up with McDonald. And I think Nate See, Nate and I have similar process on tight end, and I'm really pissed at myself because I didn't follow through with this, the kind of the fourth wide receiver idea about tight end. I wanted to play Ertz all week long because I thought Ertz was like this total lock for 20 points.
He was the play at tight end, and he ended up being the play.
Yeah, and even at 6,500, I thought he was a value at his position, even though he's the most expensive tight end on the board. And I wish I would have stuck to those guns because I feel like I could have found a third cheap wide receiver, or I could have found a cheap running back, or I
Valdez-Scantling, bro.
Yeah, okay. I want to get into that in a minute because I think that was a total fish play that worked out. But I really wanted to get Ertz this week, but I ended up on McDonald because I just like everybody else thought that Atlanta's this total black hole in the middle of the field. And if you didn't play Juju, you had to play Vance.
I just played them both. And frankly, I don't know what happened because Vance last week played a lot. And I don't know if you guys have the snap count data or anything yet or the routes run, but like I watched that game and I felt like Vance was not on the field all that much. Like James got a couple catches, Grimble got a catch. Pittsburgh really came out and said, we're going to run the ball. And Garrett, the star defensive lineman, was out for Atlanta as well. And so they really went after them on the ground. They were playing a lot of tight end heavy sets.
Which is probably why James and Grimble were on the field instead of Vance.
Yeah, because they're the blocking tight ends. Vance is like a flex out tight end. Like he's just a catcher. And I don't think he got nearly as much time. So I think he kind of got game planned out of this game a lot. And I was not expecting that. So I'm kind of bummed. Maybe I should have been.
What was his ownership?
It was high.
48.2%. Because in general, when you're going cheap tight end, which I almost always do in cash, you want a guy with a massive team total. Because really what you're shooting for is a touchdown. And so like the number one thing you want is like a home guy with a big team total. And if he's going against a bad defense like Atlanta, all the better. So for me, at the beginning of the week, I was just like, oh, I'm playing Vance. This is easy. And I'm still kind of surprised he didn't do anything. So
yeah, I'm fine with the Vance call. I think the one thing I would say is regarding the Ertz and Kelsey thing is, I mean, just look at some of these guys' usage. They're being used like wide receivers. I mean, when you look at like the expected points based on the route trees and based on what these guys are running, I mean, literally we're talking Travis Kelsey has almost a 10 average depth of target, 10 yards down the field. I mean, he's literally running routes like a wide receiver. And so just because his designation on DraftKings is tight end, do not let that talk you off of paying up at the position because it's essentially just another receiver here.
Well, and the other thing, Nate, is just from like a game theory lineup building perspective is that there is a clear delineation between the upper tier and the lower tier. And the lower tier is all just like this amalgamation where you're like paying $3,000 or $3,500 and you're just trying to hit. And then there's the upper tier, which is just a couple of guys. It's kind of Gronk and Kelsey and Ertz. And those guys are heavily involved and have a really high floor and all that stuff. And so you're actually like, it's just a tier difference. And you're really like gaining a leg on the rest of the field if your tight end hits and they're like, all playing Vance McDonald like fish.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's the only reason I really was able to squeak out of cash with a 0 this week is because Kelsey had, a 16-point advantage on Vance. So having a 16-point advantage on that much of the field put me in a good spot. So
yeah, way more than that. I mean, Kelsey was 5 for 100, so he scored 18. Vance scored 1.6. So, I mean, But so this is something we talk,
So 16.4.
Yeah. So thanks. So when we did when we do the pod with Dave Potts, who's a really sharp baseball DFS player and a GOAT, he talks a lot about breaking the slate down by tiers, right? And if he only sees one or two good options at a position, he wants one of those options, right? He doesn't look at it like, just like, how does this lineup fit together? One of his first go-tos is, hey, listen, this guy is way better than all the other guys at the position. I want to make sure I get him because spending that money is going to give me such a big advantage over everybody else who doesn't spend that money there. And I think that's something that I need to start doing with this clear delineation at tight end moving forward because I almost never pay up for tight end in cash. And I mean, I don't want to overrate 1 week, but I think this has become a pretty significant trend. Like tight ends are bad except for a couple.
Yeah, and I think that's what I've been trying to say a little bit with is the reality is with DFS, there's kind of two ways of going about it. There's the very generalized, very structured and rigid, hey, I'm going to look at the last 10 years of historical data and say this position averages this point per dollar on DraftKings salary. This is where you want to pay up. This is where you want to pay down. And yeah, that can be a statistically rigorous way to approach it. But at the end of the day, every slate is different. And every slate, you need to look at it instead of having these rigid rules, go in and break down the slate and go, okay, who do I want? Who's going to be playing? And then go from there. Because there's going to be weeks where we get 3K wide receivers or something like that are jam them in plays where you need to pay up a tight end this week. And so we just need to look at it per slate.
Yeah, really, really good take there, which is surprising from you. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about the DSTs that we played. Josh, what did you do at defense?
Yeah, so I went back to the well. I played Cleveland Browns at home because they were dirt cheap. They were at home, and I know that Baltimore is prone to mistakes when they're pressured. So it was kind of a really simple decision for me.
Get some road Flacco. Hey, here's the thing. Cleveland with Myles Garrett out there can create pressure. I mean, easily. So
and Shogun.
Yeah. So Nate, what did you do, mate?
I went the Eagles. I just thought they were a good price play, with Minnesota banged up a little bit. I don't know. It didn't work out.
I'm surprised that Minnesota did as well as they did.
Me too.
I was huge on their passing game because Philly can't cover, but I thought that Philly's defensive line against the offensive line of Minnesota was a huge mismatch, especially on the road where communication can break down, et cetera. And they only got 4 points, and they were one of my higher-owned tournament defenses. So that was a little disappointing. The Phillies just not been as good this year anywhere as last year. So
yeah, it was disappointing for sure.
Yeah, I played the Bills, and I didn't love the Bills. I wasn't like, ooh, I'm pumped to play the Bills. That was the money that I had, and I don't really make a lot of concessions for defense and special teams. They were at home against Tennessee. Tennessee is just I don't think they're very good. And I know they had a good game last week, but like on the road
they're not good.
They're just not good. And so I was like, some bad stuff can happen. They ended up scoring 12 DraftKings points for 2.3, which was
but maybe last week should have been the indication that we shouldn't play Philadelphia this week on defense.
Yeah, maybe so. You might be right about that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just thought it was a different story with them at home. Like these home and away games, like teams can look so bad one week on the road and then look so good the next week at home. But
yeah,
that didn't work out for Philly.
I thought the Eagles were.
Defense doesn't matter.
So real fast, we need to wrap this up kind of soon, but let's just talk about some key takeaways from today. Josh, you were on a boat all day, so I don't know if you got anything for us, but anything that you learned today.
He's got an MVS rant he's got to get out.
Oh yeah, lay it on us.
Yeah, so I feel like MVS was a fish play today, and I understand that he was $3,300, and I understand what he enabled on your rosters from a construction standpoint. Like I get all that, and I see why folks would play him, but it's very difficult for me to advocate playing a wide receiver in like his first game in this situation in cash. It's just like without any kind of prior, I don't understand.
I'm assuming you haven't seen his player profiler page.
No, I know he's tall and he's fast. Like I understand. I saw Davis Maddock go off on him.
Definitely shared it with me early in the week via text message. I'm like, yeah, like 100%.
I mean, like I read about him when it was draft season, and I thought about him in best ball drafts in the last round, and I understand why you would like a player like him, but it's difficult.
Do you need to be good? Do you need to be good when Aaron Rodgers is the one throwing you the ball that many times?
Okay,
and there's nobody else on the field?
What you just said like 10 minutes ago was the wide receiver owns ADOT, and the quarterback only contributes a little bit. So,
but there's a league average. There's a league average ADOT that most players are going to be within. And from when you look at his height profile and what you could have projected him to be at, I don't see how you I don't know, at 3,300. I just played him solely, not because of my belief in his ability, but solely because of my belief in the fact that when you have Aaron Rodgers throwing you the ball, anything can happen. You're going to score. You could fall into Josh, you could fall into a touchdown if Aaron Rodgers is
here's the other.
You haven't seen me run, bro.
Here's the other thing, just from a game theory perspective, is that he was 3,300 and he allowed you to do whatever you wanted with the rest of your lineup, whether that be good or bad. In my case, not that great. But he also was going to be so highly owned that the price that he cost, and if he didn't do good, like the negative just space you get from the rest of the field wasn't all that great. So I actually thought he had very low downside, even though from a points perspective, he probably had a fairly low downside. I felt like from a holistic view, like a game theory perspective, dude, even if he scored 5 points, it didn't sink your battleship. So I was okay with it.
I mean, he could have scored 0 at 50% ownership, 3,300. He's not going to kill you.
He almost scored a second touchdown, man. He was real close.
Yeah, I mean,
he's $2,200 cheaper than Quincy Enunwa.
Yeah, the Enunwa 0 hurt. You know why the Enunwa 0 hurt so much, guys? Is because he was 1% owned, and that 1% was me.
You're pretty good at those 1% owned plays in cash, Nate.
So I don't know. Like I thought about that decision as soon as I knew that he was going to play significant snaps. I thought about it long and hard, and I was like, you know what? I could put Ty Montgomery in at running back for $3,800, and effectively I'm making the same decision as playing MVS. But then it allows me to play a wide receiver that I like even more than probably a running back. And it's just I struggled with that all week, and I backed off of both of them at the end of the day. And it probably cost me because I didn't put in like this total what ended up being the free space for 18 points instead of Taywan Taylor, who ended up being total garbage because his offense is garbage on the road apparently. Yeah. And it's just, again, that's results-based thinking, and that's not what we do here. We're not results-based thinkers. We don't do that. But I think that MVS it worked out. I think it was a bad play. Bottom line.
This is fair. Nate, what was kind of some of your takeaways from the slate?
My biggest takeaway is just don't allow Davis Maddock weather decisions to ever impact my financial decisions.
That's probably the most important take that we could possibly.
I shouldn't have got off Mahomes. I was on Mahomes. I mean, luckily it was only like a 1-point differential with him and Goff because Goff is just in such an efficient elite offense that it worked out. But yeah, it's
interesting too because like as much as the data is that you're into is that. I mean, we know this because there's enough research done that the only weather that adversely affects NFL games are winds that are sustained above 20 miles an hour.
I know. I was feeling confident.
I don't know if you know this, Nate, but snow helps out the run game a lot.
It does.
Don't point me on this thing.
We had the LaShawn McCoy game. We damn sure did, bro. That was a hell of a week.
The internet's going to drop off. Right?
Nate's like, the internet's cutting out again.
So, yeah, can rain hurt an NFL game? I think yes, but it has to be like hurricane, torrential downpour.
That's why it was fishy. It was because I was getting off my data. I wasn't confident in my projections because everybody was scaring me about Jacksonville and me losing some faith. When you have skin in the game on these things, it gets scary when you're locking it in with rain, Jacksonville, thinking, what am I thinking? But no, I should have stuck with Mahomes.
You got to come on the show later, and we're going to roast you. Like you played the Chiefs against Jacksonville in the rain. You fish.
No, really, the thought process you need to have is like, okay, well, if I'm scared of the weather, what's everybody else thinking? They're going to be more scared than you are probably, and they're going to be backing off the game, which gives you even more leverage on the situation.
But leverage isn't necessarily what I want in cash games. Sometimes in tournaments, that's fine. But in cash games, at the end of the day, I'm way over leveraged already when it comes to my 1% receiver plays. Okay, I don't need to have more leverage at a position where there is so little variance when it comes to, Mahomes versus Goff. The projection difference there is less than 2 points. I mean, I'm not going to.
It was a conviction play for you, right? Like Mahomes was a conviction play before you got scared of the weather.
Yeah,
right?
And I got talked off of it because of the weather. It was a fish.
So if it's a conviction play, why would you back off of that?
Because I was a fish.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, Josh. The whole thing is me admitting I was fishy.
But bless you for that. Just like, man, Davis reeled you in, bro.
Yeah.
He got you. Yeah, you're Billy Bass on his wall right now.
Yeah. Well, Davis also played Stafford in cash, so
Well, we got that in common.
Yeah. All right. Well, good place to wrap it up, my friends. This has been the Week 5 Gillcast. As always, you can find Josh on Twitter at FantasyADHD. You can find Nate on Twitter at Nate Nohling. And you can find me on Twitter at Sammy Reid FI. In between my seasonal baseball tweets, I do occasionally talk about football, and you can enjoy that. So good luck. Hope you guys smash this week, and we will talk to you guys next week. Take care.